let's try to start. Okay. I'm not really like air law as a subject because there is technically not that much of the interesting information, plus there are generally no logic. We will need to just memorize a lot of the different rules. But anyway, we will need to know this thing, at least because we will meet this kind of questions in real exam in the CE. So the first thing which we are going to describe in air law, that will be actually the organization which was established for idea to finally make standardization of the everything in aviation. Because before this organization actually was established, each country has own rules. So when you, for example, flew in Germany, you have a one rule. If you're entering into the France, that will be completely different rule. In case if you enter into the Czech Republic or any other country, they will have own rules. And you have no idea which rules are actually you're supposed to follow. Your own one, the rules of the country in which you are entering, how to actually perform communication or navigation, and how everything works. So that was necessary to create something which will technically make standardization of everything, at least as much as practically possible. And this organization, it's the ICAO, or International Civil Aviation Organization. ICAO as organization was established 7th of December, and unfortunately, yeah, we will need to remember at least year. It was 1944. That was that's happening in Chicago, and that's why that calls as a Chicago Convention. In 1944, in Chicago, there was the huge, like the convention or conference between almost like half of the country in the world, which is trying to find some solution, how to make the unique rules for all of the airspaces and the unique rules for crossing the borders. And in the result of this conference, they established the ICAO, or International Civil Aviation Organization. This organization was established by the United Nations, and this is technically the special agency of the United Nations. Main globe developing the safety standard for the civil aviation. So technically the main task for them, it's just make the equal safety standard like everywhere in the world. To say more correctly, not everywhere, but only between the countries which is signed the Chicago Convention or enter into ICAO countries. At this moment of time, it's almost actually all the country in the world, except the couple of them, something like North Korea, maybe something like South Sudan, and some kind of like, or a new country or some country without technically civil aviation at all. And this country in the questions will call this a state. So technically the state of ICAO will mean that some country which has signed the Chicago Convention. ICAO, again, important things. That's ICAO technically not creating the rules, and it's not creating the laws how we're supposed to how each airplane is supposed to fly, or how the airplanes in a different country in the world supposed to fly. The ICAO will technically provide for us recommendations. So technically, ICAO will establish some kind of standards. So we would like to have, for example, this kind of point of view. For example, we would like to measure distance in nautical miles. Or for example, we would like to measuring the altitude in feet. So this is like our standards, and we recommend you to use this kind of standard. And the state of ICAO or country which has signed the contract may actually allow these standards and use this standard. Or for example, they may say, nope, we will using meters for altitude. And in case if they will using meters for altitude, they will need to inform ICAO that they're using the different standards. Why ICAO actually not creating the rules or law and create only like the standards and recommendation? The problem is that everywhere in the world, the situation with aviation will completely different. In each country, you will have own specific. In each country will be own weather, own aerographical and geographic of the territory, own problem with aviation, and generally, each country will decide which recommendation and standards will be important for them, which of them will not important. For example, that can be Austria. Technically, everywhere inside of the Europe, so if it's United Europe, if it's like European Union, whatever, everywhere inside, we will think that this is domestic region. So technically, when I perform flight, for example, from Czech Republic to Germany, yeah, I'm kind of crossing the border, but I'm still in domestic region. So technically, there is no border. And that will mean that if I'm not crossing the border, I don't need to fill the flight plan. And from Czech Republic, I can fly to Switzerland, to Switzerland I need. I can fly to Slovakia, to Poland, and I don't need to fill the flight plan. But in case if I flew to Austria, it's mandatory to fill flight plan, because in Austria, they have a lot of the hills, a lot of the mountains, and they are actually relatively high. So there is a lot of turbulent air can blowing, plus not everywhere you may actually receive the signal from the ground station, I mean, on the radio. And Austria think that for their purpose, it will be more safe to actually fill the flight plan in case if you will flew outside from the ATZ or CTR territory, out of the Gulf airspace, to say more correctly. Yeah, so ICAO give only recommendation and standards, and they are not creating the rules or law. They will send this recommendation to each country, and each country will decide, will it use it as the law or no? Will it actually convert this recommendation into the rule or law or not? The structure of ICAO. Again, I'm a bit confused why the pilot is supposed to know the structure of ICAO, but we have these questions in the PPL and also in the ATPL exam, so yeah, we will need to know the structure of ICAO. The main organ in International Civil Aviation Organization is the assembly. And technically, assembly, it will be the organ which will presence from each state which is signed the Chicago Convention and technically into ICAO regulation. So technically, each country which is using and following their recommendation from ICAO will classify as a state of ICAO, and at least one person from each country is supposed to be present in this assembly. Then, council, I hope I pronunciate it correctly. So council, that will be the technically exclusive organs, which is technically will be elected or voted every 3 years. So technically, the assembly will once in 3 years decide which technically the 36 countries or which 36 person who is present in assembly will enter into this council. That's just a voting technically, but of course, technically, the more airplanes is flying in your country and the bigger civil aviation you have, the higher probability that's technically this country will be in a council. So of course, every year there will be USA. Okay. Then, Secretariat. This is technically the permanent administrational organ. The Secretariat will be responsible for receiving all of the mails, which is like all of the mails and reports, which will be in the tons going into the ICAO. Technically, sooner or later, every aircraft accident or incident or even some report situation, sooner or later it will reach in the ICAO, and it will lay there in the archive for at least 3 years. They're collecting all of this information plus statistics about the safety, the reasons of the aircraft accident and incident, and all of this kind of information for idea to actually improvement the safety operation. So technically, they collect all of the cases when something is going wrong. They will create the special committee and the commission. This is technically the group of the experts which will sitting and thinking, okay, so we have a lot of the problem in this kind of area, and we will need to fix it somehow. So in case if we will recommend them to do this in this, we think that it will increase the safety of the flight. So this committee or commission will take the statistics from Secretariat, sitting and thinking how we can improve the situation. And then they will preparing the new documents, new standards, or new recommendation for the state of ICAO. That's we think that these procedures will be more safe than the previous one. So please, if you want, you can change it on that one new procedure, which will be more safe from our point of view. That's all. Then, also on the Chicago Convention was established not only ICAO. There was also created the first, as I remember, 14 annexes, and in which this moment of time we already have 17 totally of them. So technically annexes, it's the main document which will describe for us this will be the main documents with the standards and recommendation which is ICAO is actually issued and provide to each country state. Technically, all the annexes will divide it on the topics, and each annex will technically cover only one specific area or one specific zone of knowledges. Each annex can be modified, and every time when ICAO technically create the new documents or establish the new recommendation, they will not just create a brand new document. They will actually modify the old annexes. So, for example, again, it's not happening like every year, but from time to time, ICAO may update like the one document or another document. So technically, they update annexes and send the new revision of the annexes to each local authority. I believe for the PPL level, we will need to, anyway, we will go through all of them because I already not remember which one we will meet in the ATPL, which one will be in the PPL. In ATPL, it will be definitely all, but in the PPL, I'm not remember which exactly one will be most important. For sure, will be important for us the first 6. The first annex will represent for us the personal license. So technically in the annex 1, we can find the information about all the regulations and recommendation about the license. So technically that's there will be information that we have a PPL license, we have CPL license, we have this type of rating, type rating, class rating, night rating, IR, multi-engine, so which actually qualifications exist in this world. Also, they will give the recommendation for the minimum amount of experience. That can be hours, it can be also age, that you, for example, unable to receive the PPL license if you are younger than 17 years old, and technically this kind of standard. So there will be information about the rules, how you can receive the license, which license it's supposed to be, what is the privilege of your license, and this kind of information. Annex 2 will represent for all the rules of air. So technically, which documents supposed to be on board, which the medical certificate you need, which documents supposed to be for the airplane. Also, based on which rule you may cross or you will unable to cross some, for example, national borders, which again, well, not advantages and disadvantages, but let's say which characteristics each airspace will have. So this kind of information. Annex 3 will represent for us some meteorological services. So technically, the Annex 3 will describe actually the standard for the METAR, for example. So that's the METAR supposed to have this kind of structure and TAF supposed to have this kind of structure. Also, which information and which kind of format will present for us. Annex number 4, that will be aeronautical chart. Again, the rules and recommendation about how the pilot chart or map which we're using for navigation supposed to looks like for VFR flight and for IFR flight as well. Also, then we have Annex 5. Annex 5, actually the annex which is almost not modified at all from the beginning of the ICAO. It's the unit of measurement and units of measurement to be used in air and ground. So technically in Annex 5, we have all of the standard measurement unit for pressure, temperature, speed, altitude, distance, time, and technically for everything. And inside of this document, we have recommendation which measurement unit is better to use, which one is not so good, and also the standard for conversion, one measurement unit into another measurement unit. Then Annex number 6. For the Annex number 6, we will have actually separate subject in ATPL. So technically, air law is a subject of ATPL, will covering all annexes except number 6. For the Annex number 6, we will have a separate subject, which will call this operational procedure. Technically, this annex is modified the most frequently because it all the time taking the new regulations, new restrictions, new requirements, new procedures, new everything. And this annex will collect the information about the how many fire extinguisher you need to have on board in case if you have this amount of the seats, how many rafts or life jackets, how many megaphones supposed to be. In case if you enter in this kind of situation, you're supposed to do this, this, and this. So generally all the operational procedure with the airplane. Annex 7, it's the national aircraft nationality and registrational mark. What is the top 5 frequently used? Well, I can say that's top 5 which you will most probably meet in the questions. That will be for sure personal license, so Annex 1, rules of air number 2, that will be operational procedure 6, and I believe aerodromes 14. That will be your for sure meeting in the questions. Number 7, it's the registrational marks. Number 8, airworthiness and maintenance of the airplane. So technically how to maintain the proper technical condition of the airplane. Number 9, facilitation. This is more related to the aerodrome operation, which is supposed to be there and which additional services they're supposed to provide. Number 10, aeronautical telecommunications. So technically the descriptions about the communication itself will be in Annex 10. Annex 11, air traffic services. They will describe the responsibility of the controller in the different airspaces. 12, search and rescue. So technically, if there's some airplanes are lost and we need to find them somehow. 13, not really lucky number, so that will be aircraft accident and incident. So when something horrible is already happened. 14, aerodromes. What is the structure, which light supposed to be, which marking supposed to be, and this kind of thing. Aeronautical information services. So technically what's supposed to be in AIP. This will describe a little bit later. Then environmental protection. Environmental means nature or weather. So technically how to protect the airplanes and the structure from the different weather phenomena. And then we have 3 brand new annexes, which was established only like a few years ago. That's 17, it's security. And be careful, this is not safety. Security means that security of the airport. So which person is allowed to enter in which compartment, which person has access to this part of the airplane, and so on and so on. And which kind of like the security system supposed to be installed. Annex 18, it's safety transport of dangerous goods in the air. So sometimes airplanes, especially cargo, will transferring something not really safe. For example, it can be some explosive materials. Maybe it will be some, maybe it can be some weapon. Maybe it can be concentrated garlic sauce, because concentrated garlic sauce, it's also dangerous goods. And 19, it's the safety management. This is like the last new annex which we actually have. Now, we will go through you about the garlic sauce. Well, the problem with the garlic sauce, that's first of all, if it's concentrated, it's kind of aggressive liquid. And in case if it will acting on some metal construction, it may actually trigger corrosion. But this is not the main reason. The main reason in case of the leakage, garlic sauce will create a lot of the like smell of garlic, let's say like this. And you will absolutely unable to maintain control on the airplane because you will start to crying and whole of your skin and eye will significantly erase or trigger it. So yeah, concentrated garlic sauce, it's kind of weapon. And for the airplane, that will be dangerous goods. Yeah, it sounds funny, but in reality, imagine you are in a closed space and with tons of the garlic around. Will you able to actually like see something in case if you continuously crying? I don't think so. So yeah, sometimes it sounds funny, but all the rules is actually written with the with some kind of logic or with the blood of the some person. Yeah. Okay. Also, the thing which was established by the Chicago Convention is the freedom of air. And I believe for the PPL level, we will need first 3 or maximum first 5 of them. So technically, what is the freedom of air? Freedom of air is the rules which is described in which cases what you are actually able to perform. Yet, if you will read all of them, you will figure out that technically you can fly from any country to any country via any country. But the problem is this kind of answer will not acceptable if you will go to the real exam in some CEA, and you will need to remember exact numbers. So which technical rules, which exactly number will applicable to which rule. So that's why we will need to go through them. First one. The first freedom of air will say that you have a right to fly over the foreigner country without landing. So technically, in case if I will flew from, let's make this some example, from US to Brazil over Mexico, I can legally overflew Mexico without any like this special, without actually any special like the agreement. I will need to most probably fill the flight plan, but this is technically that's all. So I'm have a right to flew over the third country in case if I flew to another country without any landing. This is the first one. Second one, I have a right to actually land for the technical reason in a third country on the way to the second one. So technically, yeah, we have here on the right really amazing pictures which will explain more or less what is going on. So the first rule say that in case if I flew from one to another, I can overfly third country without any landing, and theoretically without significant reasons, they unable to actually do something with my airplane. For example, what is exactly happening with the Ryanair over the Belarus? Because technically they disregard with the first freedom of air. That's the airplane flew from the Greece, as I remember, to Lithuania, flew over the Belarus, and theoretically they have all rights to cross this airspace without any restrictions. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you know that sometimes these rules are not working, but usually for this reason, that's supposed to be the some actually extraordinary situation. So it's something not regular supposed to happen, because usually you may cross like the airspace of the any country if you like preparing the at least flight plan, international flight plan for this, and that's kind of like the legal procedure. Yep. Which question? More than sanction that can be more happen to the Belarus because of the incident. Well, this is actually a really funny thing, because in aviation we almost don't have any like the sanction or penalties. So technically, no matter what's happening, the maximum like the penalties which you will pay, it's like the extra burned fuel or something like this. In the worst case in aviation, it's technically when you will be banned. So, for example, if you will make some mistake, so your license will annulate it and they will not valid anymore. In case of some country is doing something wrong, so technically they are not respect the international rules. So technically the other countries will not respect the freedoms of air of that country. So theoretically, if the Belarus is the state of the International Civil Aviation Organization, they was unable to stop the airplane in the air and actually force the pilot to land and not in the destination. Plus, that was even not alternate airport for this flight. So that was illegal actions. In this case, if the Belarus does not respect the rules, that's the other country may not respect the rules of the Belarus. So that's what is exactly happening right now. That's the flight from the Belarus are like prohibited through the Europe. If they will try to cross the border, they will be amnested. Okay, did the pilots do the right thing, or Well, the pilots. Pilots usually, well, first of all, let's say like this, that all of the responsibility on the safety of the flight on the captain of the airplane or pilot in command. And technically, it's supposed to be decision of the pilot in command to deviate from the track and land in not in alternate airport or continue flight to the destination. That will be totally responsibility of the pilot. But pilots are usually kind of like the belief in the words of the controller. And if controller is tell you that there is something wrong, you will believe to the controller there is something wrong, especially you are not expect that this is some kind of like politics game or something like this. Plus, we have one thing which calls interception. So in case if you will not following the instruction of the controller, the controller will actually lift off the couple of the fighters. According to international rule, you're supposed to following instruction from the fighters. Okay, whatever. So technically, the maximum what may happen is the ban. But again, the question is for how long. Okay, so first rule of air, so flew from one country to another country over the third one. Second rule, or second freedom of air, it's when you will flew from one country with the technical landing at the third country to the second one. So for example, you land here without embarking or disembarking passenger or cargo. You just land there for refueling, for example, for some maintenance, maybe you will need some like the water assistance or whatever. So technically there is not commercial purpose of landing. There is just a technical one. So you just land in the third country, for example, for refueling, and you continue flight to your destination. Number 3, it's the right to fly from one own country to another. So technically this rule is say that you can fly from, I don't know, like from, let's choosing some country not in the Euro, from Moldova to Germany. So technically you can fly from one country into another country. You may rights number 4, it's the flight from another country back to your own country. So technically from Germany to Romania. Oh, Romania, Moldova, because Romania, it's Europe, so technically there is no border between, whatever. Rights number 5, it's the right to fly between the two foreigner countries on the flight orientation or ending if the one country. So technically, if you are originally from that country, you can fly to the second one or to the third one, and then you can fly between some other countries. Rule number 6, it will be technically the same, but goes in the opposite. You can fly from other country into your country and then fly to the third one. Rule number 5, technically you can fly between the foreigner countries even without entering into your one. So if the airplane, for example, has registration somewhere on Bagam Islands, and the airplane will fly between Russia and Turkey, even not reaching the Bagam Islands, it's also acceptable. And this is rule number 7. Rule number 8, that will be the inside of the foreigner country. So technically, let's say, Korean Air airplane may actually perform the internal flight from Korea to Charles de Gaulle Airport, and from Charles de Gaulle Airport, the same airplane may actually fly, for example, to Bordeaux. So even within the other foreigner country, and rights to fly inside of the foreigner country without actually continue to one own country. So you can actually use this airplane for the operation inside of our country without any restriction. As I'm already said, technically you can fly from any country to any country with any reasons. But for the PPL questions, that will important to remember the numbers here. And yeah, the most important 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, I believe. At least first 3 you will need to remember for the rest of your life. That you can overflew any country, that you can make a technical stop in third country on the way for refueling. For example, if I will flew from Czech Republic to Italy via Croatia, and I will make the technical stop in Croatia for refueling, that will be exactly the second freedom law. In case if you will filling the international flight plan, yeah, there is no absolute restrictions to entering into the Europe from the Africa, actually. You can actually Google somewhere on the YouTube. We'll Google on the YouTube. Try to find some on the YouTube. There is some guys who is buying the airplanes in US and bring the airplanes into the Europe. You have a technically two options. You can bring them in a container on a ship, or you can actually flew from US into the Canada, from Canada to Greenland, from Greenland somewhere to Iceland, and from Iceland already to Europe. So yeah, the guys on the Cessna sometimes flew from US to Europe. So if it's possible from US to Europe, what will be the difference to flew from the Africa to Europe in case if you have all the necessary documents on board and in case if you fill flight plan? There is a different story. Yeah. Sometimes the local regulations may require special authorization to cross the border, and with Russia it sometimes happens. But yeah, again, you will need to spend a couple of days to actually take the all agreement that's technically the Russia will allows you to cross the border by the air, and then yeah, there is again no problem. There is some guys who flew from Russia to Europe without any troubles, even on the own private airplanes. And now I'm speaking not about business jets. ICAO is one of the to take the ETOPS rules. Yeah, but ETOPS rules is completely different story. ETOPS rules, it's the part of the operational procedure. This is the extended twin engine operation, procedure specific standardization. So technically, this is the special document for extended range in case of the engine failure for the twin engine airplanes. Only for twin engine airplane is the part of operational procedure. Okay, now let's go a little bit closer to the local level of organization, because ICAO technically covering everything. And if ICAO is covering everything and ICAO is not producing the rules, we're supposed to have some organization which will producing the rules which we're supposed to follow. In case if we will speak about the Europe, that will be EASA, or European Aviation Safety Agency. In case of the USA, that will be FAA, Federal Aviation Authority, or administration, I believe. In Canada, that will be something like CASA, and for example, in India, that will be DGCA. So this will be like the authority which will covering not just the one single country, it will covering just like, let's say, some region, and they were responsible for the region. In case of the EASA, so the EASA will technically responsible for creating the rules, recommendations, and standards for the whole European region and the country which is actually respect those rules. For example, Turkey, which is not in Europe, technically following all of the recommendation, standard, and rules of EASA, actually. So technically, this objective to establish and maintaining the high level of the safety aviation, like of the civil aviation safety in Europe. Additional objectives provide the level playing the fields for the all actors in the aviation market, facility to the free movement of the goods, person, and service. The rule of EASA is development and provides the guidance materials and also issued the certificate. For example, type certificate for the some airplanes will issued by EASA, not by the some local authority. Our important organization which we will need to know. The first one is the IATA, or IATA, it's the International Air Transport Association. And technically that will be already the private organization which was built by the biggest airline company in the world. Technically, this organization is responsible for the almost everything which is happening in the commercial aviation. So those guys is actually preparing the some airways. Those guys actually prepare the some standard rules recommendation for the, for example, the the fees in the airport, which they will not decide which exactly one, but they may actually give the recommendation. Those guys actually responsible for logistics. Those guys actually preparing some system, for example, for booking the flight or booking the passenger seat. When you're making check-in or boarding into the airplane, the system which is used the airlines to actually counting the passengers was actually designed by IATA. So technically, this is those guys are not that much interesting about the rules of air and all of this kind of stuff. These guys is more doing the more practical stuff. So they can create some system for, I don't know, calculating the passenger, or maybe some equipment which will improve the safety of the flight or whatever. But this is private organization, and this private organization may only, how to say, prepare something, show it to ICAO and say, guys, look, I have something. We think that this airway will be more safe, or we think that this airway will shorter and save fuel. So let's make it published, or something like this. European organization, so for them, they are not interested in the safety, they are more interested in the, like, let's say, well, safety partially, yeah, but they try to make the airline businesses more logical and more like standardized, again, in the different areas. For the safety, will responsible ICAO. For the like commercial part of the airlines, will responsible IATA. European Organization for the Safety of the Air Navigation, or Eurocontrol. Eurocontrol, technically, it's the main organ which is responsible for air traffic management. Technically, when you fill the international flight plan in Europe, this international flight plan will automatically goes to the Eurocontrol. And when you will flew, for example, from Czech Republic to Austria, this flight plan will go not to the CEA of Czech Republic. This flight plan will not go to the CEA of Austria. This flight plan will go to the Eurocontrol, and Eurocontrol will decide, actually, is this flight plan a safety or not? If it's safety, so they will actually allow you to fill this flight plan and then activate this flight plan already somewhere in the air, for example. So technically, will be the main organ which is responsible for the traffic, to the air traffic control, management of this air traffic, and providing all the traffic services which the controller is actually providing for the pilot during the flight. Yeah, IATA and Eurocontrol. So yeah, here we have approximately structure. Of course, somewhere on the top of the structure, we will have an ICAO. ICAO is the organization which will provide the recommendation and standards. So again, not rules and not laws. They will just say that we think that this way is better. They will send this like the updated documents to the regional authority, FAA, EASA, CAS, DGCA, any of them. Those guys will already create the rules which are supposed to be signed by the local authority, for example, Czech CEA or Germany CEA or Austria Control or any other local authority. And technically, the rules will issued by the EASA and signed and applied to the real life will already responsibility of some local authority. Here, the most important thing to not be confused where exactly which level. For example, the highest one is ICAO, but they are not responsible for the rules at all. EASA will be responsible for the rules, but this is not the local authority. This will be the regional authority. And the local authority in each country will be own one. Well, in some weird cases, it can be, for example, one local authority for the few countries around. But again, in Europe, you will never meet this kind of thing. And the local authority, for example, is the Czech CEA, so it's responsible for Czech Republic, or Germany CEA, which is responsible for Germany. But all of them will be under the EASA, which will issue the rules and establish all of the rules of operation. And then CEA will already provide the rules, standards, and changes for all of the aircraft operator. That can be flying school, that can be some airlines. Now, Let's speak a bit more detail about the Annex. I think I'm already described everything what we can say about the Annex 1. So technically, Annex 1 is the personal license. So technically, inside of this Annex, you can find the information about all the regulations, which type of the license exists, which is the limitation for this license, and so on and so on. If you're interested to read, this is actually really a huge book, but if you're interested to read, you can find it in LMS, in a part with documents. We have all of the annexes on our website, so you are welcome. In Annex 1, so there will be standard and recommendation practice for the licensing of the flight crew member, provided by the Annex 1 Convention of International Civil Aviation, and ICAO maintain the task. That's the foreigners or resolutions of the difference in the licensing requirements to ensure that international licensing standard. To say simpler, maybe in your country you have a special license for the airplanes with I don't know, according to your local rules, that's you don't need the license for the airplane lighter than 750 kilograms. And according to ICAO standard, it can be like this. So technically, the main task of the ICAO in the Annex 1, it's actually make the standard of the licensing everywhere the same. Because again, before the ICAO, that can be just the one license for multi-engine and single-engine airplane. There was no difference. If you know how to fly, for example, on single one, you don't need to actual license for the multi one. Or, for example, if you have a license for the landing on the land, you can automatically have a rating for landing on the water surface. And this is two completely different story. So technically, in the first annex, the main task for ICAO is actually make the license in the different countries looks more or less similar and have more or less similar structure with the ratings, with the license itself, and with the different classes and types. At this moment of time, everywhere in Europe, they more or less standardizate. The difference will be the color of paper and technically the background print on your license. For the Europe regulation, the most important for the Europe regulation about the license and different requirements, we will need to check the Part FCL. Part FCL is the published document, so in case if you will open the Google and write Part FCL, you will find the final or the last revision of this document on the official website of EASA. Part FCL, it's technically the rules for the issued the license inside of the Europe. Again, we need to remember that the ICAO will technically issue Annex 1. Annex 1, which is standard and recommendation. So technically, they recommend us that this structure for license will be the best way from their point of view. But then EASA will watching on all of these documents and say, okay, so we will take this, and this one we will make, for example, more strict or something like this. And then EASA will already issued the document and rules which all countries in Europe supposed to follow with respect to amount of hours, to the requirement age, to all of the technical rules about the issuing the license. Again, if you're interested, there is just 1,297 pages. Of course, like nobody never actually read everything here. You just technically open the search and searching for the most important actually part. For example, I don't know, like the theoretical knowledge examination. I'm open theoretical knowledge examination, and here they will explain the period of validity of all of the documents, which one and which period of time I supposed to actually issued, for which period of time some ratings or license will valid, and also here I can find the information which will related to which topics we will have, for example, in the ATPL or in a PPL. Which levels, how it's supposed to be classified. So technically, all of the information can be written here. Stands for, so for example, if your IR rating is already expired, So how you will need to, or no, IR rating is too complicated for us. Let's say single engine piston. So single engine piston rating, for example, expired. So what I supposed to do in case if my single engine piston rating expired? And if it will finally download it, yeah, we will able to find the rules for renewal of this single engine piston. So for example, if it's already expired less than this amount of months, so you will need to perform, for example, one flight with instructor. If it's more, for example, than 1 year, so it's supposed to be at least 2 flights with instructor before the check ride. In case if it's more than 2 years, it's already expired, you will need to fly almost half of your PPL training again. So all of the rules, all of the restrictions, for example, the regulation about how many hours you need to fly to actually make the administrational prolongation of license and this kind of thing. Anyway, and yeah, even in this awesome document, we can find the information that's in this awesome document actually written that you're supposed to pass your exams in a CEA at least on a 75%. And yeah, FCL is the flight crew licensing. A few about this. Some important regulation which we will need to know for the, again, for the questions and generally for you. That's the entry requirements for the PPL. It's at least 16 years old for the first solo. Technically you can fly with instructor even in the 15, even in 14 years old, but your first solo flight can be made only when you will be already 16 years old. And you are unable to receive your license until the moment when you will be 17 years old. We actually always have like 1 or 2 students which is 16 and they waiting for the birthday for the check ride, because technically they already complete everything and just waiting when they are waiting when they will able to pass the check ride and complete their PPL training. Also, requirements for graduation the PPL. Again, this is the minimum amount of hours. It can be more, but for sure it's supposed to be not less. For the PPL or the private pilot license, you're supposed to have at least 45 hours total time, which will include at least 25 hours flight with instructor, at least 10 hours of the solo flight, so without instructor on board, and which will include at least 5 hours of the solo cross country with 1 PPL long nav. PPL long nav or long PPL navigation, that will be the route where you're supposed to make the 2 full stop landing in 2 different airports except the airport of departure, with a total distance 150 nautical miles, and with one leg supposed to be longer than 50 nautical miles. Well, to say simpler, that will be approximately 3 hours sitting in the airplane, and you will need to take off from your departure airport, for example, from Litnyane, flew to Český Budějovice, then to Karlovy Vary, and from Karlovy Vary back to Litnyane. And you're supposed to be alone on board of the airplane. If you will technically cover all of these requirements, you will ready to go for the practical exam. And yeah, in case if you successfully pass your PPL exams, you will have some privileges, and the privileges of the PPL license is acting as the pilot in command or co-pilot on the airplane for the non-commercial operation. So technically, you can actually fly on the airplane with a mass not more than 5,700 kilograms, as I remember. So you can actually take the passenger on board. The passenger will able to pay for the airplane. They can pay for the fuel. They can pay for landings fees, or for example approaches, for everything, but you unable to actually make money on this operation because this is just a private license. That means that you are not commercial pilot, you are unable to actually work as a pilot just with the PPL license. That's why you will need to make actually the commercial one. Technically, the difference between PPL and CPL, it's like difference between driver license and taxi license. If you are just a driver, it's kind of prohibited to work in a taxi without the licensing. You cannot actually make money that you are transferring some people from point A to point B. But you may always take the passenger on board, your family, friends, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. And anyway, you can actually, they can, for example, pay for the airplane rent or for the fuel, and that will be still legal. Also, theoretically, you can fly as the captain or as the PIC on the airplane up to 5,700 kilograms and up to 20 ton. You can fly as the second pilot, but again, you will unable to actually make money. You can make money in case if you have a PPL license only with one type of the job. It's the two type of the job. It's the drop the parachute, I mean the parachute jumpers, and the second one it's the towing gliders. And for both of them, you will need to make the one additional rating, but it's extremely simple. But yeah, you're unable to make money without CPL license, to say generally. Then part med, or medical examination document. Technically, the thing which will describe for us the requirements for the pilot for the different licensing, which kind of license you like, which requirements for the which type of the licensing, for which period of time which license will actually valid, and how you will need to prolong which license. Second medical class, again, it depends where you will actually do this. In case if you will make it in the Prague, it will take almost half of the day for the medical class 2, but there is nothing actually special. There is something, they will check your eyes. You're supposed to have not, if you're not wearing the glasses, they're supposed to be ±2 in the dioptry, not more than 2 for astigmatism. If you're wearing the glasses, it's ±6. No daltonism, any form of the daltonism. You're supposed to have 2 legs, 2 arms, 2 eyes, and you're still supposed to have at least some amount of the heart rate and be able to breathe. For the second medical class, I believe it's like this. For the first medical class, it will be all the same, plus they will make the audiogram. So technically, they will check your hearing, that you're supposed to be able to hear the frequencies, all of the frequencies within the some limits. Yeah, well, of course, the blood pressure, they will check they will make electroencephalogram, well, not electroencephalogram, the electrocardiogram. They will also check your blood pressure, take the blood on a test. You will need to pee in some cup. No, well, just basic thing. For the medical class 2, there is actually, it's not more complicated than the medical commission for the driver license. For the first class, yeah, there will be additional tests, for example, for hearing. And yet nothing actually extra. In Czech, you may also meet in the Czech Republic, I mean in the Prague, on the initial medical, you may also meet some psychological tests. I did my first initial medical in Austria. That's why I don't know how it actually looks like, but again, from the feedback, the test exists only in the Czech language or in the English language, and there is some test on the logic. If you're not that good in the English, for example, you're not a native, test on the logic can be too complicated on not your native language. What about if I have a medical in the Belarus? What? In case if your medical was certified was issued by some EASA medical office or organization or the private doctor, it's not so important. You may just arrive into Europe, find some doctor which have the special certificate for issued medical license, and he may actually prolong it. In case if it's not EASA one, so you will need to make initial one. I think the best way actually to find out, you can again try to type in Google the Летецкий лекарь, лекарь. I'm not speak Czech, unfortunately. Yeah, but anyway, you will need to perform the renewal, but yeah, you can. For example, my first medical was I made my first medical in Austria, and I make a prolongation of the medical in Czech Republic just because it was cheaper. Yeah, so it's absolutely not important. The important thing for them is in which country you will flew, because all the time on examination, they will ask what is the state which has issued your license. So if you have a license, for example, in Austria, and you're doing the medical in Czech Republic, you will just need to say that you have an Austrian license, and that's all. And in Sweden, it costs €1 for the medical class 1. Well, in Austria, it's 840 approximately, and that was like the 4 years ago or something. In the Czech Republic, it's something like 480 or 500. So I believe that in the Czech Republic, it will be one of the cheapest. I hear that in Italy, it costs 120, but in literally, it's actually really, really hard one. Anyway, let's continue. Well, 430 in the Netherlands. So yeah, in Czech Republic is plus minus similar. Yeah. So in Italy, it's actually like a really cheap one, but usually the medical there is actually kind of complicated and strict, let's say like this. At least I hear it from some of the students, that they technically not dividing you on like the commercial pilot or like the fighter pilots. Well, pretty similar medical like in Russia, let's say like this. Oh, no, complicated. Well, I hear it's actually different one, but okay. Good to know. Okay, let's just quickly complete the part regarding to this, the annexes, and we'll make a short break. So the main part of the Annex 2, it's some regulation or rules regarding to the air. And of course, the general one, it's the different restrictions and classification of the different airspaces. For the my class 2 and I hear like the opposite, because we have one instructor here, and at least like the couple of two students from Italy actually made it in Italy, and they said that it was actually kind of hard. I don't know. Maybe it depends from the mood, Today it's like easy, tomorrow they have a bad mood, and so it became twice more complicated. Well, they also, but I don't know, they have not that good actual experience with them, most probably. Anyway, it's good to know. Rules of air. Rules of air is technically the rules classification and specification of the different airspaces, and most of them will written in the SERA, or Standardized European Rules of Air. Technically, in these documents will be responsibility of the pilot in command of the aircraft, which is supposed to be responsible for the operation of the aircraft according to this regulation, so according to SERA. Also, before being the flight, pilot in command of the aircraft shall become familiar with all available information appropriative to the intended operation. To say simpler, before actually taking off on the airplane, you're supposed to know all of the local regulation, which can be different, for example, from one country to another country. Of course, if you flew in the Czech Republic only, you don't need to that often actually checking those kind of information. But in case if you were planning to fly, for example, from Czech Republic to Germany, maybe it's better to read AIP of Germany before you will actually taking off, because you will need to know maybe some local regulation about the noise abatement procedure, about the transition altitude, or about some local regulations which can be slightly different comparing to Czech Republic. Then also in the Annex 2, we can find the limitation and requirements for the VFAR and IFAR, or for the visual flight rules and the instrument flight rules. So for us, the most important is the visual one, and the visual shall be contained to continuous of visibility and distance from the cloud equal to or greater than accepted special VFR flight. So technically here, this is actually a really amazing table because it's usually really hard to remember which exactly limitation we're supposed to have in which kind of condition. But here it's everything looks more or less simply. So in case, not important in which airspace you are actually located, in case if you will be below 10,000 feet, minimum visibility is supposed to be 5 kilometers, except special VFR. Special VFR, it will be the different story. So if you below 10,000 feet, 5 kilometers visibility. If you above 10,000 feet, 8 kilometers minimum visibility for the VFR. And in case if you will be in class Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, if you will be, in case if it will be Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo airspace, you're supposed to maintain separation from the clouds in 1,500 meters horizontally and 1,000 feet above or below the clouds. In case if you will be in a Gulf airspace, well, I don't know, like where in Europe we have a Foxtrot, but in the Czech Republic we have only Gulf and there is no Foxtrot. In a Gulf airspace, visibility minimum still 5 kilometers, and you're supposed to be just clear of clouds. So there is no separation requirements. Please just not entering inside, and it will be already classified as a VFR flight. Yep. Now, special VFR. Special VFR will technically provide for the airplane only in case if you flew within the CTR. So this is control aerodrome zone. Only within the control aerodrome zone or inside of the CTR, you may actually receive the clearance for the special VFR. Technically, what is this? Does the military airspace come under any of those? Yeah, military airspace, it also airspace. So in case if it will be TMA, that will be class Delta. What's the problem? And yeah, in Europe, let's say relationship between the civil pilots and military pilots is a little bit different. So in case if you, for example, need to cross some military CTR or TMA, or for example, flew over the runway, not without landing, of course, they will most probably not allow you the landing only in case of the emergency. But you may just contact them, ask, can I cross it? Yes, you can. Well, not like this, of course, it's like some Nameshti tower, this airplane, request enter to your CTR, proceed from this point to this point. In, I believe in 100% of cases, when I request something from military CTR or TMA, they actually give me permission for this. They're usually kind of boring because the controllers in a military CTR usually, in a military TMA, they usually sitting and do nothing. They not that often actually have some exercises or activity, and most of the time they just sitting and do nothing. They boring, so they will always happy to at least communicate with some person and provide for you at least some traffic information or whatever. Of course, they will not allow you to land into the military base, but you may easily cross if you will request it. Again, only if you request it. If you will try to enter into the military airspace without clearance, you may have a problem. So be careful. Special VFR. Special VFR, it's the condition when weather is dropped below the VFR minimals, but you need to, for example, land into this airport, or for example, you need to extremely take off from this airport. And in case of this is control airport, so they equipped with a radar, they will always see you on the radar. The controller, you may request special VFR, and controller may provide special VFR for you. Technically, it will be somewhere between IFR and VFR flight, because controller will give you the vectors which you will need to maintain, and you will need to maintain vectors, but still maintaining visual contact with the ground. In case if you will requesting the special VFR procedure, your minimals will drops to clear of cloud and still in a line of sight with the surface, so you need to still be able to see the ground. Then flight visibility is supposed to be not less than 1,500 meters, and this is extremely low. In case if you will really have this visibility, even in a special VFR, you will most probably will unable to see a runway from downwind position. So not really love the actual situation. And your speed supposed to be not higher than 140 knots indicated airspeed under the control. Yeah, something like this. Ground visibility is less than 1,500, or ceiling is less than 600 feet. In this case, the special VFR will be not issued for the traffic. Marshal signs. Sometimes in different CA, which is translating the questions from, for example, from German language, they may call this guy not as a marshal signs, it will call us as a signalman. And for me, it sounds actually really, really funny. But anyway, we will need to be more or less at least familiar with the general actual emotion which this guy is actually showing to us. The most important thing for us will be, it's the boom, 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 where this thing will be. This one. So technically, when he is shaking the hands forward and backward, that represent like, come on, moving forward, relative to you, not relative to him. He always actually represent what to do for you. So if he will represent go forward, you just going forward relative to your position. If he is represent the direction to the left, you are turning to the left. If this guy is represent direction to the right, you are turning to the right. He also, I believe, for us will important something like this. So in case if he's slowly closing the hands above his head, that means that we will need to stop normally. In case if he made it rapidly above his head, so that will represent like emergency stop right now, or most probably you will cut me with the propeller. Yeah, what else? Also, where is this awesome? There is no design. The sign for the brake set, when he is technically like put the fingers into the fist and doing like this, that means that the brake set. So technically you need to hold the brakes and this moment of time. And also sometimes they can also ask you to do something like this. When they showing like this, that means that you need to shut down engine and show the keys, because if he will planning to pull your airplane with the propeller, he need to be sure that the propeller will not start to rotate. So you shut down the engine, brakes set, you switching off the airplane and showing the keys. Sometimes they can actually create some special, like the action which will be out of this table. For example, once I saw that one. I'm initially think why the marshal is actually trying to make it up, but then I realized it was already close to the end of the civil twilight. That was kind of dark, and I still have the landing lights on. So technically, this motion was represent for me that, guys, switching off landing lights or I will be blind. Yeah. So, but yeah, generally, taxi forward relative to you, not relative to him. Like turn in this direction, turn in, well, Jesus, turn in that direction, turn in this direction, and stop. Brakes set, and just show him the keys. That's all. Technically, this is all what we need to know about the marshal signs. Okay. Boom, 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 boom. We will make actually the short break today or not? Or we can continue. This is up to you. I think we will try to make a short break. I will need to actually update my T. Otherwise, I will unable to complete this whole collection. I will activate attendance and link for attendance going into the chat. So yeah, open the link and click on attendance button. Yeah, looks like it's working. Awesome. So yeah, let's make a short break just for the 10 minutes, I believe, and then we will continue. Okay, let's try to continue and speak a bit about the Annex 7 or about the registrational marks. So technically, in the Annex 7 will represent the documents which will classify the thing which calls state of registry. State of registry, it's technically the country which is put the airplane on the registration. It's similar to the signs on a car with the number which country is technically issued, but relative to the airplane. With the airplane, the situation can be more interesting comparing to the cars, because usually the car is supposed to be registered in a place where you registered, if it's your car. In case of the airplane, you can actually make the registration almost in any countries. That's why most of the all commercial airplanes, I mean like the big jet airplanes, some Boeing and Airbus, may have a registration in a country where they actually never been. For example, somewhere on the Bahamas Island, or for example, some airlines may be registered in the, let's say, Ireland, but the registration of the aircraft will be somewhere in Hungary, or for example in Poland. Usually it will generally depends from the taxes which you will need to pay for the airplane, or where it's easier and faster you can make this registration. But whatever. For us, important that's the state of register. It's technically the country which will issue the registrational mark for the airplane, and also this country is supposed to issue the one of the most important document for the maintenance of the airplane. It's the airworthiness certificate, about which we'll speak a bit later. So technically, in the Annex 7 is describe the requirements for registration mark and technical rules how some of the state or country will put the airplane on the registration. Also, there will be some standard about the size of the registrational mark, where they're supposed to locate it on the airplane, and from which angle or side they're supposed to be visible and readable, let's say like this. Based on a registrational mark, we can always actually figure out in which country this registration was made. For example, in the Czech Republic, all the airplane registration will always start from the Oscar Kilo. So Oscar Kilo, and then some amount of letters or numbers for, individual for each airplane. In Slovakia, that will be, for example, Oscar Mike. In Germany, that will be Delta. Also, for the PPL questions, we will need to know which registrational code will be prohibited to use. Technically, in a different country, the logic regarding to the registration mark, the principle of issue the registrational mark can be different. In some cases, you can actually choose the registrational mark for your airplane in case if our airplane don't have this kind of registration. Once in the Český Budějovice, I saw the airplane with the registration Delta, so it's Germany registration, 2 Sierra Echo X-Ray Yankee. So technically, it has a registrational mark as Delta 2 Sexy. And you can actually choose the registrational mark of the airplane in case if there is no any other airplane with this registrational mark. In some countries, you are unable to choose the registrational mark, like the signs on your car, and technically you will catch them with some random sequential. Anyway, if not important, you are able to actually choose the registrational mark, or you unable to choose the registrational mark, some of the registrational codes will prohibit it to use. And the first restrictions, or technically the prohibited call sign or registrational mark for the airplane, it will be all the 3 letters Q code. What means the 3 letters Q code? That can be QNH, QNE, QFE, QDR, QDM, QUJ, QTE. So everything which may represent some abbreviation which is frequently used during the flight. So QNH, QFE, it will be pressure setting. The QDM, QDR, it's magnetic bearing to the station and from the station. So that's why we are unable to use them as well. Plus, it's prohibited to use the distress code. Which kind of distress code we actually may have? Well, can be Sierra Oscar Sierra, or SOS, Save Our Souls, or something like this. That's prohibited to use X-ray, X-ray, X-ray. Also, that's prohibited to use Tango, Tango, Tango. And it's prohibited to use Papa Alpha November or technically PAN, because PAN is the urgency message, PAN, 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 PAN. All other registrational marks are available. So technically, we have a couple of the airplanes in the Czech Republic with the registrational mark, for example, Victor Oscar Romeo, so VOR. That can be, for example, November Delta Romeo, and no, November Delta Bravo, NDB, and some kind of this thing. So all our call signs are available. We are unable to use the Q codes, and we are unable to use the distress messages. So SOS, X-ray, 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 Papa Alpha November, and Tango, Tango, Tango. All our is available. Now, one of the most important documents from the maintenance point of view for the airplane is airworthiness certificate. Airworthiness certificate is the main paper which will prove that airplane is safe for operation from the technical point of view. And in case if airplane will maintain this condition properly, so technically we will perform proper maintenance, we will actually maintain this airworthiness certificate. Airworthiness certificate will issued by the state of register. So technically, if your airplane is registered in the Czech Republic, the Czech CAA is supposed to issue your airworthiness certificate. If your airplane is registered, for example, somewhere on the Bagams Island, that means that Bagams Island will issue your airworthiness certificate. So the country of register will be responsible for issuing the main document for the maintenance and the main document which will technically prove that airplane is safety for operation. Shall be issued by the contract state, shall be renewed and remind validity. So in case if your airworthiness certificate expired, that will mean that you will unable to flew. You will need to make a renewal or prolongation of your airworthiness certificate. Usually it will be just a paperwork. Nobody will physically check the airplane. You just need to technically prove that all necessary maintenance was performed in the proper moment of time, and that will be already enough to prolong your airworthiness certificate. Every aircraft shall provide this certificate of the airworthiness. So yeah, each airplane actually is supposed to have it because it's proof the safety of this aircraft. And this is how this thing approximately looks like. So here on the top, we can see the certificate of the airworthiness, who is actually issued this certificate, the Czech Republic CAA. There is the individual number. There is also the individual number of the aircraft. There is the manufacturer and design of the aircraft, who is actually responsible for the proper construction. The registrational mark of the airplane. Then we have category, the date of issued, so when it was made, and technically stamp and signature. And yeah, this thing you actually supposed to check before every flight. Then air traffic services or Annex level will actually represent for us information about the which technical responsibility, which type of the controller will have. Again, if you already have some experience in aviation, you most probably hear that some of the controller will call us an info, some of the controller will call us a tower, maybe it will be radar, or it will be some information, or it will be radio, or it will be approach, departure, ground, arrival, air, delivery, and so on and so on. Technically, this prefix before the name of the controller actually will represent the responsibility of this controller. So technically, which kind of services this controller will able to provide. So, например, if it will be, for example, in case if it will be the controller with the suffix of the tower, so technically this controller is responsible for takeoff and landing. In case if it will be controller with the prefix ground, this controller will be responsible for the taxi on the ground. If it will be delivery, so the delivery will issue the startup clearance and give you some departure information. For the PPL questions, we will need to know, first of all, that different prefix will represent for us different responsibility of the controllers. Also, it will represent for us prevent the responsibility of the air traffic controller, that it's prevent the collision between the aircraft, prevent the collision between aircraft in the maneuvering area, and also prevent collision with some kind of obstructions or obstacles in the area. Expected and maintain the ordinary law of the air traffic provides the advance and information useful for safety and effect of the condition in the flight. So technically, not only prevent the collision, but also we may request some information from the ground stations. For example, what is the weather at this airport, at the destination, or somewhere on the way? Some information about the traffic, or maybe some information about active area on the way. They will also provide it. In case if there is a European football championship is going, theoretically you may ask controller how actually the Italy is playing with the England, in case if you are in the air and you're absolutely unable to see this football match. This is theoretically also available, but this is not like official properties of the air traffic controller. Also, we will need to know the three parts of the air traffic services. So technically that it can be the air control service, that will be a provision of the air traffic control services for the controlled flight, except arrival and departure. So technically that can be or tower, or it can be radar. Approach control service, that's providing the air traffic control services for those part of the controlled flight associated with arrival and departure. And aerodrome control services provide air traffic services for the aerodrome traffic. So technically, just these three things. Annex number 12, search and rescue. So technically, in case if your airplane is lost somewhere or some other airplane is lost somewhere, it's losing the communication, it lost from the radar, and something actually not really good happen. And of course, some special search and rescue team will try to find you in or other traffic in case if you just like disappear. What we will need to know about the Annex 12 generally, that this is search and rescue, and the search and rescue services according to Annex 12 supposed to be available and provided on a 24 hours basis. So technically, no matter it's happening during the day or during the night, the guy who is responsible for search and rescue is supposed to be available on the frequency. If their authorities believe that the sum of aircraft in emergency, has to inform SAR, or search and rescue, immediately. When the pilot observes that the other aircraft in a distress, the pilot shall determine the position of the aircraft and report to the required condition center, ATC, type of the aircraft in a distress, time of observation. So technically, if you see that some airplane is in a distress situation, you're supposed to at least take his position and technically type of the airplane, type of distress, which you, if you actually detect this, and time when you actually observe this kind of traffic. In case if we speak about the search and rescue procedure, we technically will have a 3 different phase of emergency. That will be that's always hard for me to properly pronunciate. Uncertainty phase, or INSERFA. Alert phase, or ALERFA, and distress phase, or DISTRESSFA. Technically, each of them will have different definitions, and they will activate one by one. So the first one is the situation where the uncertainty exists as the safety of the flight or its occupants. So technically, the example of this situation can be that you just lost from the communication, so you are not replying on the ground request, and you, for example, invisible for a controller on the radar. But in case if according to your flight plan you still have fuel on board and they just lost you from the radar, this phase will call this INSERFA phase. In case if according to your flight plan you already have only final reserve fuel on board, this will be already ALERFA, or technically alert phase. That will be the situation where the apprehension exists of the safety of the aircraft and occupants. So technically that means that soon that will be the situation when airplane will be, or that airplane will be already on the ground for 100%, but maybe it's safety land somewhere, or it's actually crashed somewhere. At the moment when when you, according to your flight plan, start to burning your final reserve fuel, that will be automatically trigger the ALERFA phase, or like alert phase of the search and rescue procedure. That means that some team who is responsible for search and rescue will actually ready to will be prepared for the, how to say, departing in a direction of your approximate location. So technically where you theoretically supposed to be. Distress phase will represent for a situation where reasonable, certain, that's the aircraft and the occupants, their grave and the immediate danger and the required immediate assistance. The example of the distressful phase, it will be if, according to your flight plan, you already don't have fuel on board. So if you already don't have a fuel on board, or you land somewhere, but you're unable to actually contact with some traffic controller service, or you already crashed. In this case, the search and rescue team is going into the direction of your last position and trying to search for you and technically find or the place of your landing or the crashed airplane somewhere on your way. Also, again, this thing I'm actually never saw in real life, but these kind of questions exist, so we need to know how to work with this thing. This will be ground air visual sign code. So technically, in case if some group of the people on the ground, not important, they was on the airplane or wasn't, that can be just some random group of the people who is going somewhere in the mountains or in the forest and just lost, for example. In case if they will require some assistance, they may actually make the ground, like the visible from the airplane signs on the ground. And yeah, unfortunately, we will need to remember also all of these things. So the first one, V, will represent for us that's the group of the people on the ground requires some assistance. And I don't know why, but requires some assistance from you. In case if it will be crossed, it will means that they requires the medical assistance. November for negative, Yankee for affirmative or yes. And arrow will represent for us like proceed in this direction. So this group of people actually requires some assistance. Now they are not here and they goes in this direction. What you're supposed to do in case if you see one of this mark from the airplane, technically you're supposed to at least inform the controller that you see some kind of ground marks and maybe there is some group of people which will require the assistance. Give me the second. Yeah, of course, but like if you will, this science is especially designed for the airplane. So technically, if they don't have any communication, they will try. Theoretically, they may try to actually give the signs to some airplane. Your responsibility as the PIC, just like not provide some assistance. Your responsibility as the PIC is detect this message and pass this message to the controller. He will send this information to some appropriative authority who will actually responsible for the help and assist to this group of the people. Yeah. Then triple L will represent for us operation is completed. Again, I have no idea in which case we can use something like this. Number 2, it will be double L with the lower line. We have find all personnel. Double cross will represent for us that we find only some of the person. Double cross diagonal will represent we are unable to continue returning to the base. This sign will represent for us that the group is split on a 2 and the one group is going in this direction, another part of the group going in this direction. And double arrow will represent for us that's information received, that's the aircraft is in this direction. And double November will represent for us not found. We will continue searching. Just try to remember it. You can make a print screen of this thing and later use in a question database. Okay. Annex 13, aircraft investigation. Not really lucky number and not really lucky annex. Technically, this annex is described the procedure necessary for which we will need to perform in case of some accident and incident situation. First of all, I would like to say that in aviation, all of the investigation. So technically, when some situation has happened and the investigation is performed by some local authority, investigation is made not for the purpose to find who actually did something wrong. The investigation in aviation works with a different purpose. The investigation is trying to find why this kind of situation has happened, and they will also try to figure out how to prevent this situation in the future. So in case if some airplane is crashed, the commission which will be responsible for investigation will not try to prove that that's happened because of the technical problem or because of the pilot mistake or because of some other reason. They will need to find the reason, but this reason will be not for idea to find who was responsible for this failure situation. The idea is how to prevent this situation in the future with our aircraft. Yeah, this is the first thing. The second one, we have two different definitions, accident and incident. I will first of all properly read how it will most probably looks like in the questions, and then I will try to describe it shortly. So accident is the occurrence associated with the operation of the aircraft with take a place between the time any person board the aircraft with intentions of flight until such of the time as all such a person has disembarked, in which of the person is fatal or serious issue. And incident, it's technically the same, but occurrence the other than accident associated with the operation of the aircraft, which affects or could affect the safety of operation. First of all, extremely important part for us, it's from which moment till which moment we will actually classify everything what's happening with the airplane or accident or incident. From the moment when any person is boarding on the airplane, and what is important for intentions of flight. So in case if you are a maintenance, which is arrive on board for some maintenance purpose, or for example, taxi on the airplane from point A to point B, and he will, for example, fell from the stairs, it will not classify as the accident or incident, because he is entering on board, but not for the purpose of the flight. He is entering on board for the different purpose. So from the moment when any person is entered on board of the airplane with intentions of the flight, till the moment when all of the people has disembarked or technically leave from the airplane after the flight is complete. During this period of time, everything what is happening will classify or accident or incident. What will be the difference between accident or incident? Accident is something horrible. So in the result of the accident, there will be some or fatal issue, so some person is dying because of that, or that will be some serious issue. So broken, like there is actually a huge list. There is like the huge list of the different issues, approximately for the 2-page A4, but simpler to say that the person is or dying, some of the person is dying, or actually have the serious issue, broken the bones. For example, it will require some operation, or for example, if we speak about the women, the lost a baby, for example, it will also classify as the serious issue. So in case of after the hard landing due to the excessive G load, some woman on the board will losing the baby, it will also classify as an accident. Incident, it's the condition which is what can be close to the accident, but no. So technically, then something is happening and significantly affect on the safety of the flight, but everybody survived, nobody dying, and there is no serious issue happen with any person on board which is entering for the purpose of the flight. Also, for us, extremely important who will be responsible for the investigation. Technically, the responsible for investigation, it can be actually like the group of the people, or it can be just one authority who will be responsible for the investigation. But no, about the responsibility, excuse me, a little bit later. First of all, you will, in case if there's some accident or incident happen, you will need to report about this, and you will need to, with the minimum delay, inform about this the state of register, because he is responsible for the airworthiness certificate of the aircraft, state of operator, so technically country where this airline or, for example, flying school is registered, state of design, technically the country which is actually made the design of the airplane, for example, US, and state of manufacturing, the country which has produced the airplane. And yeah, sometimes country which is designed the airplane and country which is produced airplane is two different countries. For example, the most new example, it's the Airbus 220, aka Bombardier CS300. Technically, it's absolutely the same airplane, and the state of design it's Canada, but technically the state of manufacture it's USA. So technically, at least one of them you're supposed to be informed about this. Now, who will be responsible for the investigation? Event in the territory of the contract state. So technically, in case of the state of the occurrence, so technically the country where it exactly happened, shall investigate the investigation, but it could be delegate this authority on another state. So technically, the first priority in investigation will have a country or state in which this situation actually happened, but they can easily delegate this responsibility on some other, for example, authority. For example, they can delegate it on a state of register or on a state of the manufacturer. So they may say, technically, we are not enough qualified, so maybe you will make it better. Event on territory of the non-contract state. So technically, what to do in case if the airplane has a registration in the Czech Republic, which is flew from Moldova to Egypt, and it's crashed. Well, no, Egypt is the bad idea. Flew to Kenya and crashed in the airspace of Egypt. What to do in this case? Who will be responsible? Technically, that's supposed to be the country where it's exactly happened. But again, that's sometimes can be hard to classify where exactly this happening. And in case if we have some disagreement between which country actually responsible for investigation, in the result, the responsibility for investigation will be taken by the state of register. So in case if any other country or any other state don't want to make investigation, that will be responsibility of the country which is give you a registrational mark or state of register. At least state of register will be always the part of this investigation, because for them will be extremely important to know what exactly happened and will this airplane actually take the airworthiness certificate or not in the future. Anyway, the state of the conduction investigation is responsible for the final report. Final report or report what is actually happened in that situation. Aerodromes. Annex 14 or aerodromes will technically describe the marking sign, which is the limitations for the runway supposed to be, which is the category classifications of the runway can be, how everything is supposed to operate, under which angle you can actually taxi, for example, and generally just information how to make good, comfortable for operation aerodrome. Regarding to the Annex 14 aerodromes, we will technically need to know just those signs, which you can see now on the screen and also on the next page. Here we have informational sign, or sometimes it will call us a locational directional sign. In case if we have something with yellow letters or numbers on a black background, that will be your locational sign. So technically here we are located at the taxiway Bravo or at holding point Bravo. Here we are locating at the holding point or taxiway Bravo. Here it's holding point or taxiway Alpha, most probably holding point Alpha. Here it's again Alpha we are location. Here Bravo. In case if some information will be present as the black number or letters on a yellow background, that will be directional informational sign. So technically it will represent for us what will be if you will turn to the left, to the right, or if you will crossing some kind of thing. So for example, the upper one will say that we are at the taxiway Bravo. If we will turn to the left or to the right, we will turn to the taxiway Charlie in both of the case, or for example in these options. In case we are right now locating at the taxiway Alpha, but in case we will taxi forward, we will cross the runway. So this is technically runway vacated sign. Again, here we have apron. This is the black letters on yellow background. This means it's a directional sign. So apron in that direction. All of these examples, again, is the directional sign. So taxiway Golf 2 will be in this direction, taxiway Golf in this direction, or in this direction. Then also the information about the runway, takeoff runway available. Again, this is the directional sign. So it's not the information where you exactly located. This is the information that if you will turn to the left, you will have 2,700 meters of runway available. And mandatory sign. Mandatory sign is the sign where we will need or stop, or it will represent prohibited area to enter, or at least we will need to have clearance to cross this kind of sign. So technically, we will need to ask permission from the controller. The mandatory sign will always present as the white letters on the red background. So technically, that can be, for example, some runway designation. So information that there is runway 25 and 07. It can be information that you are at the holding position Bravo 2. And if it's red, you will unable to cross this position without clearance from the controller. The same actually will be with, for example, this sign. That will be a holding point of the runway 25 for category for the category of the approach 2. And without special clearance from the controller, you will unable to cross this. You will unable to cross this sign without special permission from controller. And yeah, for example, here we have combination of location information, yellow on black background, which means that we are at taxiway or holding point Alpha, and in front of us some runway 25, and to cross the line in front of us, we will need to take permission from the controller. This sign will represent not entry, so this is totally prohibited area by some reason. Now, lights. It also will be the part of the Annex 14 or aerodromes, and here we will need to know the couple of important things. First of all, we will start, I believe, from the taxiway. Taxiway center line will supposed to have a green color, at least approximately green color, which will represent for us the taxiway center line. Edge of the taxiway, so technically the border of the taxiway, supposed to have a blue color. In case we will try to transfer this logic on the runway center line, supposed to be white, and the edge of the runway also supposed to be white. At the beginning and at the end of the runway, the edge light can be converted into the yellow one. Plus, our center line can be from the threshold of the runway will go as the red line. Then it will be alternate white and red one, and then it will be just a white straight till our threshold of the runway. But all the time, the center line of the runway is supposed to have a white color. Also, at the threshold of the runway, so technically at the beginning of the runway, we will have a lights which will have the different color, depends from which side we are actually watching on them. In case if we will approach the runway from this side, so we will perform the landing in that direction. This will be beginning of the runway. So it will be the front edge of the runway or front threshold. In this case, we will see the green color. In case if we will performing landing from the opposite side, and technically here we will be already on the runway and we will need to stop before the end of the runway. On this side, they will look red. So technically for this side, they will look green. If it will be beginning of the runway, it's green. In case if it's end of the runway, they will be red. Something else? Yeah, puppy lights. Puppy lights is actually geniusly thing, and this is the easiest, the simplest actual light system which can be installed in the aerodrome, which may significantly, let's say, improve it will significantly make your life easier for the approach, because you will all the time know where you are exactly located. You are too high or too low. Does the light change if they change the direction? No. There is just the lights have two parts. Technically, they have one side. On one part they blowing with the red, so towards to this direction, to the left, these lights will be looks like a red. But in case we will just coming over and we will watching on this light from this side, that will looks the green. They lighting all the time. They are not switching they will not switch the color in case if the runway direction is changed, because technically if you will approaching from this side, that will be edge of the runway, so for you it's green. If you will stop on the runway or decelerate in that direction, they will be red. In case if you will make the approach from the opposite side, nothing will change. the lights, the only one thing which you can make with the lights is you may ask controller to decrease or increase intensity of the lights. That's all. And in some cases, you may ask them to switch it on. Yeah, regarding to the puppy lights, I think I will try to draw this thing. Give me the second. So technically that will works approximately like this. I will use green and red because it's kind of stupid to use the white one on the white background. So technically we will have a lights which will cut it on two parts. The one part of this light will be red. The other part is supposed to be white, but I will use the green one. So technically that will works like this, that it will create the beam. And in case if you will be below, you will able to see the only one color. In case if you will be above, you will able to see another color. Yeah, they have a proper angle. And for example, in case if the airplane located somewhere here, you will able to see green one, and you will know that you are above. In case if the airplane will be somewhere here, for example, so in this case, you will see it is a red one. So it depends from your angle of path. The color will be or red or white. Well, in my case, it's green and red. The light doesn't change. It's just still the same light. It's just upper part of the light is white. The lower part is the red one. And the only one question is where you are relative to this light. If you will going slightly up, so you will see it as a white one. In case if you will be slightly below, it will become red. Yeah, you are welcome. Technically, we will have 4 of this light, and each light will have a little bit different angle. In the result, our perfect or normal approach, it will be conditioned when we will see the 2 red and 2 white. That will mean that we have a perfect glide slope angle, which is approximately 3 degrees. In case if we will be above, we will see 3 white, 1 red, or we will see 4 white light, which will represent that we are technically above the normal flight path. In case we will be below, so it will be or 3 red or it will be 4 red boxes. Do you know if they're using also in the military airport? I believe, yeah. This technically the puppy lights or precision approach path indicator. It's actually a really cool thing. It's cheap, so you will not wasting like the millions of euros to just create complicated light system. And this thing is significantly simplify the life of the pilot. It also can be used in a military airport. Why not? For the PPL, we just need to know that this thing will call us a PAPI or precision approach path indicator, and perfect approach, it's the 2 white and 2 red. If you're below, that will be more red. If you're above, that will be more white. Of course, the perfect condition when all we will have 2 white and 2 red, but in case if you will ask me what is better to be above or to be below, I prefer to be slightly above. Well, of course, this is the perfect one, but if you're unable, it's better to be slightly above than be slightly below, because you will be closer to the different obstacles. Okay. Oh, yeah. Signed on the uncontrolled aerodrome. So sometimes when you arrive to the aerodrome and there is nobody, even on the frequency, nobody is replying, and there is most probably no controller. But if it's uncontrolled airport, you can actually perform the operation by yourself. You just need to check the aerodrome sign information. Sign information will represent what to do technically at this aerodrome. So you will need to make the overfly over the runway on the 500 feet above the traffic pattern altitude and check the wing sock and check the ground marking. What we can see on the ground marking, if we will see the T letter, that will represent technically for us that's the takeoff and landing will happen from the same direction. So technically you may take off only in that direction and land you can only in that direction. So technically only one runway will operate. In case if it's T with a small circle on the top, that means that there is no the landing and takeoff will perform not always from the same direction. So you can land in this direction and you can land in that direction. That will be okay. Then two weird things. Technically, this is like the two balls which is connecting with a stick between. In case if there is a white balls completely, that will means that you may use for taxi in a maneuvering area only paved surfaces. So technically, you can taxi only via taxiway. You're supposed to take off and landing from the runway, and during the taxi in the maneuvering area, you're supposed to use only taxiway. In case if you see the two balls with the black lines here, that will represent that for takeoff and landing, you're supposed to use only runway, but you can taxi in any direction, and technically in the maneuvering area, you can do whatever you want. You can create your own taxiway if it's grass field, for example, and you may vacate runway in any direction. You may taxi to your parking place in any direction, and you may not following the taxiway. But again, this thing will be more related to the grass runway, because when you land technically on the field, it's not mandatory actually to follow some kind of taxiway. You can taxi technically on your discretion. Cross, double cross, it's the glider operations, and the glider will have priority. So if you see the glider, you will need to give the way to the glider. H, designator helicopter landing and takeoff area. I think this one is logical. Red with yellow arrow to the right, that's the only right-hand circuit is available for this runway. To the left, only left-hand circuit or left traffic pattern will available. One yellow line on the red background will represent for us that we can land at this airport, but we need to be extremely careful in the runway and maneuvering area. So most probably nobody will actually assist us, and there is no actually people at the aerodrome. Double cross will represent for us do not land, or landing is unsafe, not even try to find some other place. Balls with the L means that some light aircraft may have operation at this airport, and they will have priority over to you. And vertical yellow lines on the red background will represent for us that technically airport is closed and you can land there only in case of the emergency and nothing else. Cones. Again, if it's the grass airport, usually for the boarding, so technically to see the border, where is the runway, where is the taxiway, we will using the cones. If it's white, it's the runway. If it's yellow, that's the taxiway. Unserviceable cones, it's the white with the red line. Also, it can be some unserviceable cross. If you can see something like this on the runway surface, that will mean that runway closed. And gables, something like this. Also can be used for the marking the border, so right and left edge of the runway. Then Aeronautical Information Circular. Technically, AIC, or Aeronautical Information Circular, is the information which is related to the flight safety, air navigation, technical and administrative legislative of materials. You can actually find this information in the flyfa.com in the part with the briefing, Europe, and going into the AIM CZ. There you can actually read the information on Czech and English language about the safety operation, air navigation in the Czech Republic, technical materials, and different administrative materials as well. What will be important for us, and anyway, sooner or later, you will actually more or less familiar with this document, it's AIP, or Aeronautical Information Publications. Technically, this document will issued by the state authority, in our case is the Czech Republic, or it can be Austria Control, or it can be German CAA. It will issued by the local authority, and this will be just a huge manual to the aeronautical rules of the air navigation and flight in the Czech Republic. So technically, each country will have a little bit own regulation. Sometimes they can be different. And before, for example, flight from Czech Republic to Germany, I will of course check AIP of Germany to find some difference. Because technically in AIP will written the difference in the operation, difference in the air navigational rules. And again, this thing we can find in the FlyFA, briefing, Europe, and in the section AIM CZ. Or just write in the Google AIP CZ, and it will be AIP of the Czech Republic. Then, AIP, it's the permanent information. So in AIP, we'll have the something which is changing not that frequently. So in AIP, there will be some information which will stay for more than half of the year, and it will be absolutely unchanged. But sometimes some small changes in operation or procedure or some hazards can be temporary. For example, next to Lithuania, we have a crane, which performs our building work. And this crane will for sure standing there not longer than for the half of the year. But we need to inform pilot about this information. So the source of some temporary information changing in operation, or for example, some information that aerodrome closed due to weather, or for example, ILS is unserviceable because of the maintenance or something like this. All this type of the temporary information we will find in a NOTAM. NOTAM is notice to airmen. Technically, there will be just a huge amount of information about. They can continue following this. Sorry. So technically, there will be some temporary information and some temporary restrictions or changing in operation of the airplane. Again, you know where to find this kind of information. Aeronautical information, regulations, and control, AERAC. This thing will update it every 28 days, and technically it will collect all of the changes in significant changes in the chart, or for example, operation at the different regions or aerodromes. How many slides we actually have remaining? Okay, awesome. Security. Technically, that will be the procedures for unlawful interference, which we will usually prefer to call as a hijacks. There will be also the procedures which will require us to establish the safety operation in the maneuvering area of the aerodrome and during the flight. And this kind of rules for the conditions of unlawful interference and illegal acts in the maneuvering area will be issued again by the state of register and by the state of operator. Technically, I believe that regarding to the Annex 17, there is not that much of the questions are available. And the last thing for us today, it's the Annex 6. Annex 6 is, I believe, the biggest annex which actually may exist. At this moment of time, Annex 6 exists in 3 different parts. And this is not the part which we can see here, A, B, C, D. That will be part A, commercial operation, part B, commercial operation helicopter, and C, part 3, that will be non-commercial operation. So technically, it's extremely huge annex because we have tons of the different procedures. For the PPL questions and generally for our knowledges, we will need to know that in the Annex 6 written all the operational procedures. So technically all of the procedures which you need to do, which supposed to be done by the state of register, state of operator, by the operator of the aircraft, in our case is the flying school, everything will be described in the Annex 6, again in the format of recommendation. Important thing for the PPL, that's according to the operation of the aircraft, the operator of aircraft, or in our case, it will be Flying Academy, so the flying school, it's the operator as well, supposed to establish the operational manual. So operational manual will describe in which condition, how, when, why, in case of the normal, abnormal, and emergency, how to calculate performance, what is the limitation, what is restrictions, and technically tons of the different information. Again, you can find the operational manual of Flying Academy in LMS in a part with the books, I believe, or no, with the documents. And operational manual of any airlines in any school supposed to be divided on 4 parts, A, B, C, and D. A is the general one, where we can find, in case of the Flying Academy, there will be management, students, discipline, also the aircraft documentation, flight duties, and the rest. Part B, it will be technical one, so airplane handling, emergency procedure, abnormal procedure, and also require a GNSS equipment and general equipment on board of the airplane. Part C, en route. So technically that will be performance for takeoff, landing, en route part of the flight planning, and also weather minimals. Again, weather minimals for the student can be different comparing to the weather minimals for the person already with the license. So in this information, again, you can check in operational manual of the Flying Academy. Staff training, Delta, it's the initial training information and standardizational training procedure. And I believe that that's all for us today. I will just at the end show you only one thing. Supposed to be, yeah, that's supposed to be somewhere here. Ice view, not air view. All the temporary changes within the Czech Republic, we can check on the ICU. Technically, you can upload here, like, and take the all information. For example, in the same place, I can take the information about the Litnyane. No, let's find something else. The Ruzine, the main airport. Here, I can find information. Well, wait a second. I prefer to read it on the English, because in the Czech, I can understand maximum 40%. Ruzine Airport. So call sign that this is the CTR. The CTR start from ground level and going up to 3,500 feet above mean sea level. This is controlled area. Then I can actually check here the information about the frequency, elevation, name, also which frequency are available and how they properly calls, where it will be Ruzine Tower, where it will be Praga Radar. Also which runway is available, call signed, public international aerodrome, and then we have notice to airmen or NOTAMs. So here we can actually find the information about temporary information about operation of this airport. For example, taxiway Romeo between taxiway Quebec 5 and stand Sierra 22 closed for all aircraft traffic. Taxiway Romeo Romeo closed for aircraft taxiing. Aircraft towing approved. So technically we have some taxiway Romeo Romeo, which is prohibited to taxi by the airplane power, but it's possible to towing the airplanes over this taxiway. For example, here, taxiway Juliet closed between taxiway Delta and taxiway Hotel. Taxiway Golf closed between the aircraft stand 53 and 60. Then the day and night marking. So they doing some rebuilding. And technically all of the information can be here. Again, in example of Litnyane, we always have information about boom, 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 boom. Now this is Czech. And this is also Czech. Okay, unfortunately, I will not able to show you this one. Maybe in Gbiel something, yeah. Taxiway closed, stand closed. VFR flight due to reduced ATC capacity following restriction applies. So some restrictions for the maximum amount of VFR traffic in the CTR. So everything, they have obstacle, 3 cranes in the area, radius 0.5 nautical miles, which is located at this position and approximately with this direction from runway. Day and night marking, maximum height 71 meters or 278 meters above mean sea level. So all of this information we can find here. Also here we can find information about the METAR, so weather information. Or in case if the ATIS available, also here we can find ATIS information. Good morning, good afternoon to Ruzine ATIS information Papa and their ILS approach, runway news 24 and blah, blah, blah. So everything regarding to operation you can also find here. And we a little bit overshoot on the 20 minutes and I'm already delaying everything. So anyway, I believe that that's all for us today. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed and that was useful.